If you've smelled a dead mouse, multiply that by 1,000. And you have the odor of a human body.
The killing is not me. I didn't do it. I'm not finna confess to it.
I was able to actually see who he last communicated with.
In his profile, they see a photo, and it's clear as can be.
I said, "You're not gonna believe this." He was trying to lure a victim into meeting up with him.
They're still trying to identify who this guy is. Who is Mr. X?
So I kind of began to wonder, what if this photo was of somebody else?
This is no longer a possible suspect. This is the suspect.
Sir, step down here.
Who is he, and where can we put our hands on him? I spent my career closing murder cases. But I'm not the only one who answered the call. It takes a rare breed to solve the unsolvable, to catch a ruthless killer, to find justice for the dead. That's what it takes to be an American detective.
I got a call about a noise ordinance. The neighborhood was a little Swanee Point. There were some dirt bikes doing wheelies nearby and possibly playing loud music. When I pulled in the neighborhood, I activated my body cam. The first thing I noticed is the truck kind of sitting off to the side.
Hey, all right, good afternoon.
There's a lady walking, and she kind of weighs me down. And she's like, "Hey, did you see the truck up here? It's been sitting there a couple days."
This truck here? Yeah. And it has liquid and stuff dripping out of the bottom. It's just weird.
Interesting. And so I got out and checked the truck. The lady's like, "Yeah, it looks like there's oil underneath the car." I was like, "That's not oil."
The liquid pouring out of the bottom is blood.
It's just weird.
No, there's somebody in there.
What?
The woman was right when she said it was suspicious, because boy, is it suspicious.
My name is Ryan Jorstad, and I'm a sergeant with the Gwinnett County Police Department. My sergeant at the time gave me a call and just said, "Hey, there's kind of a weird situation going on over by the baseball stadium." The excitement starts of, what is the case gonna bring? Some cases are solved in 5 minutes, some 5 months. When I got on scene, the truck was parked on the opposite side of the road, kind of facing the wrong direction.
And the truck is locked, so they call the fire department, who has the ability to open a vehicle with a specialized tool that they have.
The first thing I remember upon opening that truck was just the odor that emanated from the truck. It was just like punch in the face, really.
He had been sitting in this hot truck for at least a couple days, so it was pretty bad, like horrendous.
If you've smelled a dead mouse, multiply that by a factor of 1,000, and you have the odor of a human body. It's overwhelming.
When I walked around and looked in, the victim was just in a very weird position.
The person is not clothed. His shorts are down to his ankles.
His face was down on the floorboard between the front passenger seat and the rear passenger seat, along with his arms. His left ankle and leg was hanging off the back seat.
So why is this body upside down in the back seat of this truck? Well, that's what we're here to find out.
So the victim only had one injury. It was a gunshot wound to his left temple. It was kind of hard to see on scene just because it was covered in blood.
There is no gun that's apparent, but there is an expended 9mm casing that has been ejected from a semi-automatic pistol.
You know, initially we thought this might have been a suicide based on there only being one person in the back seat and one shell casing that could indicate a self-inflicted gunshot wound.
But we
don't have a visual on a gun. He may be laying on it or maybe covering it. We also don't know where, if there's any entrance rooms or anything.
Exactly. I just can't see anything at all.
And so really the only thing we were waiting on was the medical examiner to get there so we could remove the body and see if the gun was underneath them.
When they move the body, there is no gun. Now the suicide theory tends to wane. Jorstad's experience tells him this is a homicide. This has just become more intriguing.
In the front of the vehicle, there was all the stuff that had been rummaged through. Also, the victim's hat was on the dashboard. After we collect evidence from the scene, this was in process for DNA and fingerprints. There was no match for fingerprints on the vehicle or on any documents inside the vehicle.
The victim had no cell phone, no wallet, no keys, which immediately seemed to be an indication of a robbery. Whoever killed him also took the time to lock the vehicle up and then beat feet. But it was very strange to me that his pants were down around his ankles.
Does that mean some kind of sexual encounter that goes wrong? Well, it didn't have to be sexual. It could also mean that someone pulled the pants off this individual in order to search the pockets.
I racked my brain trying to think and make any kind of sense of why he would be in that position.
The carjacking on Dad. You think he got shot and he scrambled fast enough to get to the back seat before he died? His pants were like fully off around his ankles though. And the seats are pushed forward, indicating that that's probably not how they were when he drove here. So I'm wondering if he was in the back seat with somebody else.
And I just kept coming back to the same thing. It had to be some sort of meet up with somebody. And most likely whoever the victim met up with last was going to be our suspect.
I started kind of trying to dig to see who this guy was. We didn't have a wallet. So I ran the truck. I ended up coming back to Garcia Gaddis. And then after that, I ran his name and got a hit for a missing person out at Sandy Springs.
When unfortunately we could tell that it was Mr. Gaddis that was dead, and that he was actually reported missing by his mother. So that just gave me a jumping off point of who I needed to go talk to first.
Well, my name is Gilda Ages, and Garcia Gaddis is my oldest son. Even though he didn't have no kids, he was a family man because family was really important to him.
We grew up in Hattiesburg, Mississippi. He had nieces and nephews that, you know, he took as his own.
He's big, he's cuddly, a fluffy, big teddy bear. And he always would try to act like he everybody's daddy. He always made sure, you know, we'd meet up for this, meet up for that.
When we rode together, he listened to nothing but gospel music.
Garcia's music be loud, but it be gospel music. It was a joy, seriously, to be around him.
He loved gospel music, loved singing in the church.
I paid the price from heaven.
I won't say his voice was, it could have been better.
He couldn't sing. He had tried, but he loved it.
You could hold a tune in a bucket, but he didn't even care. He loved God enough to still sing.
Thank you, Jesus.
It's kind of sad, but when I laugh and think about it, you know, it's just joy that I had the time to spend with him while we did.
Garcia's mother, she was devastated when I gave her the news. She really had no idea who would do this.
Jorstad explains to her the death of her son, allows her a recovery time, and then says to her, we need to know more about Garcia.
Garcia's mother said they would talk, you know, multiple times a day. Always were in constant communication with one another.
We talk every day, and I talked to him that Thursday, and he said, I'm finna take me a shower. And every time we get out the phone, even with my kids, I tell them, I love you, be safe. And that's the last time I had talked to him. Fast forward to October 24th, when I got involved,
There had been 3 days where she had not heard from him. So that kind of gave me an idea of a time frame of maybe when this happened to Garcia.
So the next question is, who is he in contact with?
So I wrote, an order for his cell phones, hoping to see if he had made a phone call to somebody or texted somebody prior to this. Unfortunately, there was just nothing. The phone, basically at the time he was murdered, was off after that and never came back on. So after we spoke with Ms. Ages, the only thing I could think of to do was go talk to the roommate and see what information he might have.
So Jorstad contacts the roommate and informs him of the untimely demise of his friend, Mr. Gaddis. The roommate is very surprised and upset, all the appropriate reactions.
The roommate also heard from Garcia last on that Thursday, October 21st in the evening.
The roommate explains he came home around 10 p.m. and Mr. Gaddis was in the shower. The roommate goes into his room, and when he finally comes back out, Mr. Gaddis is gone.
He said it wasn't out of the norm for Garcia to come and go, especially at night. He said he liked going out and meeting new people.
So the roommate goes on to explain that Garcia Gaddis was a gay male, and he often used a phone app to reach out to other gay men.
So that kind of pointed my focus towards whatever dating app he may be using, because whoever he last met was most likely going to be on one of those apps.
It might be the owner of a 9mm handgun who put a round through Mr. Gaddis's head. Jorstad asked the roommate, do you know the name of the app he would use? And he did know, and it was called Tagged.
I know from previous experiences, I can't just snap my fingers and pull it up on the internet. So from there, I just have to write court orders to those companies and hope I would get some information back.
But in the meantime, Jorstad inquires, was there some particular individual that Garcia was involved with, or was he just playing the field?
The roommate did point out one person that he thought might be a person of interest.
He tells Jorstad this guy's name was Cole Hampton. And Cole Hampton, he's married to a woman. And Jorstad's suspicions are immediately aroused. Emotion is a huge part of homicide.
In these cases, you never know. The littlest piece of information could lead you to an arrest, so you have to, turn over every single stone.
So we know Mr. Gaddis has seen other males. Could Mr. Hampton be jealous of that? What if it grinds at him that his lover is with other lovers as well? Jealousy is a very powerful and dangerous thing. It's white-hot anger, the kind of anger that pulls triggers. Detectives who are investigating the death of Mr. Gaddis have developed an unusual suspect, a Mr. Cole Hampton.
Garcia was seeing a married man, so that was something I had someone look into.
So detectives respond to the home of Cole Hampton. He answers the door. They announce they're investigating the demise of Garcia Gaddis. Hampton looks like he's going to pass out. Hampton admits that he has been seeing Gaddis, but he also says this was a casual thing because of their unique circumstances. Garcia Gaddis had no desire to cause Cole Hampton any problems in his marriage, and Mr. Hampton didn't care if Gaddis was seeing other people. It was a mutual truce. Mr. Hampton does not cause any alarm bells to go off or raise any red flags. The detectives decide that he is strictly a back-burner individual.
When I found out he wasn't really a person of interest, I just kind of let that lame dog lie. I wasn't trying to throw a grenade in his life.
If you're bothered by dead ends, you need to find something else to do, because in homicide, you encounter nothing but dead ends.
There's always a lead, you just have to find it. And I just kind of keep that in the back of my mind of, well, I haven't found it yet. I'm going to keep working until I do.
It's a critical step in the initial phase of a homicide investigation to establish a timeline. When was he alive, and what happened between life and death?
Knowing that the victim, was found in his truck, what I wanted to do is retrace where that truck was. We have this great system called Flock.
Flock's a license plate reader database. Basically, it's these cameras that take pictures of your license plate, and then we're able to go through and search for a specific vehicle.
I just logged on, ran the victim's tag, and the last Flock hit was actually into a neighborhood across the street at the Little Swanee Points neighborhood.
His pickup truck was seen by a Flock system camera at 11:17 on the 21st of October. They're closing in on the time of death.
I was excited because that gave me a time frame to where I could just canvass that neighborhood for any other video footage and see where his truck went.
Everybody has cameras, but no matter how much technology is out there, you need both feet to find it.
We have a sign in our office that says, "Get off your ass and knock on doors," which is what we had to do in this case. Based on the Flock camera, the victim came in from this direction, so that's kind of where my starting point, and we literally just walked up and down the street, and it literally just took, walking, miles a day, knocking on all these doors. And then luckily we came in the middle, this pool house, and I was immediately drawn to this corner up here, the surveillance camera. I was super excited, knew I had to get this footage because the camera angle should cover a wide variety of the parking lot, so if anything were to happen, it would have been captured here. I was very fortunate talking with the HOA. They gave me the code and they allowed me all full access to wherever I needed, which was pretty awesome. So I was able to take the footage from the DVR and review it right there at the clubhouse. I knew my starting point was 11:17. That's what time Mr. Gaddis's truck came into the neighborhood.
Jorstad is watching the videos from the pool house. He sees Gaddis pull into the parking lot of the municipal pool shortly after 11:17 p.m.
You can see Mr. Gaddis's truck picking up somebody. And then 12 minutes later, you can see him kind of on the outskirts of the camera above, walking back towards the direction of a house. So I was pumped. I was ecstatic that we had that, because whoever this male is my suspect.
Now, this is no longer a possible suspect. This is the suspect. Who is he, and where can we put our hands on him?
The suspect appeared to be a black male, 5'7", 5'8", kind of slim build. He had shoulder-length dreadlock-style hair. He was wearing some kind of hooded jacket, some kind of blue jeans, and then some tan Timberland-style boots. The fact that he showed up on foot and came back on foot told me he lived in that area, told me I needed to focus in that neighborhood, that my suspect was there.
He just committed a murder. He's not running. He's casually walking through the parking lot. It means nothing to him.
He's calmly walking across like it's a day in the park. That kind of told me he was very callous and a very harsh person. At that point, I made a bolo, and I sent that to our agency saying, hey, this is who I'm looking for this homicide. And if anybody comes across anybody that looks like it, give me a call.
In the meantime, he finally gains access to Garcia Gaddis's dating profile. He went by the username Country Boy.
I was able to actually see who he last communicated with.
However, the person he's talking to is only identified by a series of numbers. It looks like a telephone number, but it's not. It's a number assigned by the dating app. Reading the messages between Gaddis and Mr. 614, it's clear to Jorstad that they're planning a meeting for that night, the night that Gaddis meets his death. Did Garcia Gaddis go on a date with his own killer? Well, it certainly seems like he did. Detective Jorstad has a copy of a conversation between Garcia Gaddis and the mysterious man who probably killed him.
Communication was kind of almost too perfect leading up to meeting up with him.
At 10:03 p.m., Garcia sends the first message to the user. They establish they're both looking for a hookup. Then the man sends his photo to Garcia.
It was a black male with shoulder-length, dread-length hair, and that's exactly who I was looking for based on the pool house footage.
They agree to meet up, and the man provides Garcia with an address.
That address puts you in the area of the pool house. The suspect was savvy enough not to put the exact address he lived at, but would put Garcia in the right area for him to be able to flag him down.
The last message from the user is, at 11:16 p.m., he tells Garcia he is waiting by the pool building.
That just confirmed that who I saw on video is this account user and got in the car with Garcia. Unfortunately, it was just a user with some random numbers at that time. So I just turned around and wrote the same court order I did for the dating app, but just for the suspect account, and waited.
And it's an absolutely maddening wait, because you know how critical that information is. He's already killed once. After that, it's just numbers.
So I just continue to chip away at, any possible lead that I can find. Garcia and the suspect had sent photos to each other. So I worked with our crime analyst department. We have facial recognition software where we literally can upload the photo and it just pulls from open source databases that, your picture might be in.
They submit the photograph to the facial recognition and it kicks out a Facebook account. His name is Aaron Chambers. He's 20 years of age. This could certainly be the guy.
I was just excited and knowing that I was about to solve the case.
So Jorstad now is totally focused on this individual. He's looking at his Facebook account, and it's picture after picture of Aaron Chambers in Florida, specifically in Miami, over extended periods of time.
And I was looking for somebody that had some sort of tie to Gwinnett County, and he had nothing.
He looks at him and says, the facial features are very similar, but the location is widely off.
So I kind of began to wonder, what if this was a catfish photo? Catfishing has become common, unfortunately, when somebody uses a photo to misrepresent themselves. What you're seeing is not actually the person you're communicating with.
We get that a lot. They'll just take a picture off of Google Images, put it as their profile picture, and start sending you messages, and then you'll go meet them and you'll get robbed or worse.
The photo used by the suspect was of somebody else to throw us off, the track or the scent of who he really was. In this case, weeks went by, got continuous phone calls from Miss Ages, Garcia's mother.
You call some detectives, they'll brush you off, they don't want to talk to you. But if I call Jorstad, he'll call me, and I really appreciate him for that. I didn't lose no hope. I kept the faith and believed that we would go get justice. They gonna find out who did it.
They're still trying to identify who this guy is. Who is Mr. X? And finally, the dating app information comes in.
I start going through, looking at it all, and it was a little disheartening.
He didn't have his real name in the account. He uses the name Money Dash, so yet another layer to this onion.
You could almost tell that they were trying to leave everything generic. They didn't actually use their real name. The birthday seemed to be made up. The city was just Atlanta. Well, that's, a huge metropolitan area.
In his profile, they see a photo of him, and it's clear as can be. This is the picture of the man in the pool house video. Not someone looks like him, but him.
Then taking a deep further dive into all the context of the messages, I was able to see, within that time frame, he was talking with other users.
His profile indicates clearly that Money Dash contacted over 30 people, asking if they want to hook up.
And he was it seemed aggressive in his communication. So that to me said he was trying to fish or lure a victim into meeting up with him for whatever purpose, most likely a robbery. Unfortunately, Garcia was one of the first ones to reply.
So Jorstad needs to identify Money Dash by something other than Money Dash. He needs his real name. He goes back to the IT department.
Gwinnett County Police Department has a division called the Electronic and Financial Crimes Unit. They can take cell phones and they can help us figure out where someone was going or has been.
Even if you're not using it, Your phone is in constant communication with towers and networks. So it's great, evidence-wise, because it can really pinpoint where their phone or device is connecting to. So as soon as I saw that Money Dash was hooked into a Wi-Fi network, I was able to get the actual address, which was on Cedar Drive, right in front of the pool house.
Well, Mr. Dash, you're about to find out what the dating scene is like in the Georgia State Penitentiary, because that's where you're going. This case is unusual in the sense that the perpetrator, Money Dash, spent a great deal of effort to create a series of masks, which he hides behind for various reasons, making it impossible for the police to find him. Well, impossible is a big word. The impossible just takes a little more time.
So now that I have this address, we were able to see that there was a call recently of an eviction, which was kind of disheartening to know that whoever was in that house at the time of the murder, now they're gone, and I have no idea where they are at. The sheriff's department handles evictions, so I reached out to them saying, hey, were they equipped with a body camera? Was it on? Do you still have the recording? And luckily, they still had it, so they were able to send it to me.
Hello.
Hey, I know we coming out.
Okay.
At first, the deputies, they encounter, the female living there and a small child.
Anybody else in here other than just y'all two? Who's all here?
Me and a friend.
Okay. Go ahead and call your friend out real quick.
Okay.
But then a male kind of walks down the back stairs and turns and runs back up.
Hello, come here.
No, sir. Sir, step down here. No, come here. We don't know who else is upstairs. I get it. Come on.
And as soon as he turns to walk down the stairs, it's a full body shot. It's clear as day. This is the suspect from the tagged account.
All right. Let's let everyone go ahead and step outside.
He's also wearing the tan Timberland boots. There's no doubt that that's him.
I definitely paused it. I called everybody in the unit over. I said, you're not going to believe this.
The person is 23-year-old Mark Antonio White. This is Money Dash. You can certainly hide your identity or try to, but ultimately you cannot, particularly when a competent detective is on your trail.
So reading through his criminal history, we were able to see that he had an active arrest warrant out of the College Park Police Department for an incident back in July of 2021, a couple months prior to the homicide.
An incident involving his former girlfriend and her mother.
I was pretty excited to learn that there was going to be somebody else I could talk to get any kind of information on Mark.
So she is more than happy to tell them everything she knows about her ex-boyfriend because he's such an ass. But we happen to be looking for one of those.
The ex-girlfriend was able to, tell me that she actually met Mark through the tagged app.
She describes Mark White as a hot-tempered fool who she's afraid of. And further says he always has a gun, no matter where he goes.
She said that he was kind of a very reckless, careless person, that he was going to do whatever he needed to do to survive.
And she was to the point to where she had to get away from him. So she did.
She said he was, very jealous type person. Even after they broke up, he would continue to try to talk to her.
She moved in with her mother, and in a fit of rage, she said, that Mark White shows up demanding she return to him.
And he was just very aggravated and agitated.
And as they're telling him to get out of there and the mother's on the phone to the police, she said that he turns and walks by her car and shoots the windshield out of her car. Then flees.
Police came out, they took the report, and they took the warrants out for Mark. The police that night didn't find any shell casings because it was dark out, but she went out the next day to where it happened and actually found the shell casings from Mark's gun and kept them. And she said, I have them on a bag right here on my counter.
Mark made the mistake of scorning his girlfriend and frightening her mother, and it was going to cost him everything.
So having these shell casings, I can compare that to the one shell casing in, Garcia's truck.
Jorstad, he brought back a plastic bag of casings, and we would like you to put them into the ballistic system and run them, see if they're a match to what we found on scene.
While I don't have the gun to compare, if these were fired from the same gun, this was going to further tie Mark to this homicide.
Those casings were then entered into our ballistic system, and they were matched.
Mark's 9mm is a murder weapon.
After everything I've learned, I was confident that, Mark White was Garcia's killer. Let's get him into custody.
The fugitive team is now in process of trying to locate him, and it's just a matter of time before they do. They hunt humans. They know how people run.
Mark's used a gun twice now, so his propensity for violence is pretty high. His face was in the news, so at some point they will find him.
After 8 months of searching, finally a tip comes in that says where he is.
Fugitive unit, they reached out to me and they said, "You're never gonna believe who we just saw." Officers were staking out the area. He had some food delivered to his house that he was staying at, and Mark walked outside and picked it up.
Mark White always came out on top when he's against an innocent, unsuspecting guy. But now he's against the police. And now they're going to hammer him into the ground like a tent peg. They finally got the name, they got an arrest warrant, and now they have him by the throat. This is going to be the big moment when they finally crank a gun up this idiot's nostril and arrest him.
I was lucky enough to be able to go and be on scene and was able to watch Mark be taken into custody. It was a pretty gratifying moment, seeing him get walked out of the house in handcuffs.
And now he gets to sit across from him and ask him questions to which there are very few good answers.
So preparing for the interview, there's, some key things I want Mark to admit, but, getting him to even speak to me is a hurdle in and of itself.
Hey, Mark, how's it going? I'm Corporal Jorstad. I'm sure you already met Detective Corporal Pearson. And I gotta read you your Miranda rights. So you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can be used against you in court.
His body language, he was very, very calm, cool, collected.
Having these rights in mind, do you wish to talk now? Yes. Okay.
I was confident in this case that I had the right person, so if he confesses to the crime, that's huge.
However, I can assist to clear my name, because I want to live my life. Right.
But if he doesn't and he lies, well, I have all this other evidence to show you are lying.
So, do you ever remember being in Gwinnett in October? No, I have not been to Gwinnett. Okay. Don't be in the Gwinnett area and don't travel out of my area because there's no reason to. Does this truck look familiar to you? The truck from the TV. What do you know about that truck? Nothing, other than my name is connected to it. Have you ever been inside this truck? Like I said, no.
That's just a bold-faced lie. It kind of also lets me know he's going to be, denying everything kind of from that point forward.
Like I talked about, we need to be honest, okay? I got surveillance video of you getting in this truck. Me? Come on now.
I was not shy about giving him the evidence I had. I wanted to show Mark that I had overwhelming evidence to say that it was him in hopes that he would, stop lying and finally start telling the truth.
And I want you to tell me the truth, okay? Who's that? Who the hell is that? That's you. Nah, that ain't me. Remember how we talked about being honest? And I am. That's not me. Okay. That's you. Why? Because he got dreads? No.
Mark, I just met you and I can tell you that's you, man. See what this writing is? This is a screenshot from an officer's body camera. That's you, man. Come on. It's not like it's got you sitting in a truck. You're walking down a set of stairs, man.
I'm saying, it's not me.
It was almost comical how, blatant he was just lying that it wasn't him.
Y'all putting a picture in front of me and saying that this is me. That's not me. I don't even dress like this for number one.
Mark.
That's dark skin. If I look at my skin color, that I'm light. I'm too light for this picture.
Okay. Take it easy, man.
No, you don't know nothing. These are picture of someone else, okay? And I don't give a what you talking about. That's a different skin color. I've been had tattoos on my hand. Redecorated, recolored. This ain't got no tattoos nowhere.
Mark White denies everything. He's not even sure he's Mark White.
Let me ask you this. Why did you shoot Garcia in the head?
I didn't, because I don't know Garcia. Was I in Gwinnett? No. It's just me? No. Is there my picture?
Why did you take his cell phone, his wallet, and his keys?
I have no reason to do any of those to anyone when I have a family that would give it all to me. I come from a family with wealth, you see what I'm saying? Like, don't need to kill no one, don't need to rob, don't need to steal. I don't need my name or anything involved in something such as like this. I'm too smart for something like this.
It wasn't until I showed him a photo from the tagged account, I said, well, can we agree that this is you? And he said, yes, that's me, which was a win for me because he's admitting he uses tagged. So on October 21st, Mr. Gaddis was, you guys were talking on tagged. I know that because I first got the victim's tagged account, which showed him talking with you, given the address of this pool and getting picked up there. So when you were in this truck, were y'all about to have relations, like sexual relations, and something happened?
What? Get the out of here. Like I said, I don't know this truck, nor do I know the man.
He seemed to be very insulted and very upset that I would even mention or question that he was maybe into that lifestyle.
The killing is not me. I didn't do it. I'm not finna confess to it. I can say all day, yeah, this is me. But when it come down to this shit here, this is not me. Honest truth, you see what I'm saying?
So at some point, I said, well, if you're not gonna be honest, we're gonna end the interview. And I got up to leave, and he actually stopped, Detective Pearson, and said he wanted to talk to him.
Let me ask you a question. What can make this go away right here?
What do you mean?
What can make this go away?
I'm not really sure I understand what you're saying, Mark, but this can't go away. Garcia is dead.
We can't make deals or promises. And he just kept asking that over and over again and never really got anywhere. So at some point, we just had to end the interview.
Despite the lack of a confession, with the digital trail of evidence, they have a very good idea what happened that night. Mark White was a master manipulator who used dating apps to prey on vulnerable men.
Our victim, Garcia, was frequent on those apps to meet people, as people do.
On the night in question, Mark posed as someone else to convince Garcia Gaddis to meet him for a date. Mark set an address and a time to meet, and the trap had been set.
They met up at a pool area, which is commonplace for people to meet. They literally drove not even a quarter mile away.
It's unclear what actually happened inside the truck, but it's obvious when they both got in the back seat, Gaddis was in a vulnerable position. Mark White pulled a gun.
Based on the evidence, ultimately, Mark robbed and killed Garcia.
And calmly left the truck, leaving Gaddis dead in it.
Unfortunately, we never found Garcia's phone, wallet, or keys, and Mark didn't have the gun with him when he was arrested, so that gun is somewhere.
Mark White was not convicted of any crime for the incident involving his former girlfriend. However, in the trial, Mark Antonio White is convicted of felony murder, armed robbery, and possession of a firearm. And he is given a life sentence.
How did you feel when the trial was over?
Blessed and thanking God that we got justice and our prayers was answered.
It was the best feeling when I was able to call Miss Ages and tell her that we had Mark. It's a big, powerful moment.
We got the justice that we asked for.
By the grace of God, we had to remember we still have each other, and he will want us to stand by each other and try to hold each other up in the midst of all of this.
I keep his memory alive every day. I talk to him, I, express I miss him and, things like that, but we just take every day one day at a time.
It was just easy to love him because of the way he really was.
I love my child, and I miss her. Can't bring him back, but I really miss her.
The case that Jorstad assembled is an example of excellent police work. He never got discouraged. He simply carried on until he put together something that cannot be denied. On the next American Detective.
Police believe there are people out there who know something about Lisa's murder who have not yet come forward.
What? What are you talking about?
Some people are wolves who kill because they like it. There's no one more dangerous than that.
I'll take this one. Folks, pull up a chair. You want to talk about Nicholas Cordova? You want to talk about a man whose life was snuffed out in a cold, calculated moment, leaving a family in the wreckage of a nightmare? My, the world is a dark place, and sometimes the monsters don't hide under the bed. They sit right across the desk from you, wearing the mask of a business partner, counting your money while they plan your funeral. Human beings are strange creatures. They kill for the most pathetic reasons you could ever imagine. Greed, ego, the desperate, shallow need to possess what belongs to someone else. And in the case of Nick Cordova, it is as clear as a bell that something rotten was festering in that Gilbert Air office long before the bullets flew. You have to be kidding me if you think two random guys just walked into an HVAC office, carrying an empty Freon box, and happened to stumble into a murder. Life doesn't work that way. Coincidence is the refuge of the lazy investigator. Let's look at the facts. You have Dave Sweetman, a man with a laundry list of past sins: assault, fraud, trespassing. A man who Nick Cordova, a hard-working family man, had the misfortune of calling a partner. Nick was an optimist. He was a man who wanted to build something for his kids, for his wife, Alicia. He was the kind of guy who raised his siblings when he was barely more than a child himself. He had a heart. That makes him a target for men like Dave. Alicia knew it. She felt it in her bones. 3 months before the end, Nick tells her he feels like he is being watched. And then the ultimate betrayal, the insurance policies. Dave wanted them. Dave pressured for them. And then Nick is dead, and suddenly Dave is acting like a man possessed, fumbling with stories, pacing, hiding money in his pockets while claiming he was robbed. I have seen 1,000 liars in my career. They all have the same look in their eyes when the walls start closing in. They talk too much. They explain too much. They offer details no one asked for, all to cover the gaping holes in their own fabrications. The police, they see the footage of the two men, and they breathe a sigh of relief. They see a shooter, they see a robbery, and they check the box. Case closed, right? Wrong. You see a man peeking through the blinds before the visitors arrive. You see a man who just happens to be present, just happens to have a cut on his hand, just happens to be the one who forged a signature to get his hands on $8 million. You have to be kidding me if you think that is just a series of unfortunate events. That is a motive. That is a signature. The victim, Nick, he was a good man. He was trying to escape a shadow. He was trying to get his family out from under the thumb of a man who saw him as nothing more than a liability to be liquidated. And when Nick was gunned down, execution-style, cold clinical, his partner, Dave, was right there. He survived. He always survives. He walked away with new business, a new life, and the blood of a friend on his hands. It is a tragedy that keeps me up at night, I tell you. Alicia Cordova has been fighting for 6 years, haunting those halls, begging for someone to look at the truth instead of the redactions. They hide behind blacked-out pages and administrative excuses. But the truth is rarely as complicated as they want you to believe. It is simple, it is ugly, and it is staring them right in the face. Nick Cordova deserved a future. Instead, he got a cold floor and a business partner who couldn't even pretend to mourn. If this is justice, then we are in a world of trouble. You keep fighting, Alicia. The truth has a way of coming out, no matter how many locks you put on the file cabinet. My, what a waste of a good man. People are strange creatures. They take the most precious thing they have, this fragile, fleeting existence, and they discard it for the most trivial, pathetic reasons imaginable. It never ceases to amaze me, the depths to which a person will sink when they believe they can outsmart the inevitable truth. You have to be kidding me. You look at a case like this, and you realize that the most dangerous weapon in the world is not a gun or a knife. It is the absolute, unearned arrogance of a man who thinks he is the smartest person in the room. We are talking about Laura Sweetman, a woman who spent her life studying the complexities of the human brain, healing children, and trying to build a future, only to have it all snuffed out by a shadow. And the shadow always seems to be the same one, a man named Dave Sweetman. I have spent decades staring into the eyes of men like Dave. They are hollow. They operate on a frequency of manipulation and control, and when that control is threatened, they do not walk away. They strike. It is a tragedy of the highest order. Here was a woman who was finally, after years of psychological erosion, finding her way out of a dark tunnel. She had plans. She had a future. She was a mother, a doctor, a survivor. But she was dancing with a predator who didn't want her to leave. When she finally discovered the double life he was living, a whole other family, a secret child, she did exactly what anyone with a spine would do. She tried to escape. And what happens when a controlling man loses his grip? He tries to squeeze tighter until there is nothing left to hold. The events of April 2013 were a neon sign, a desperate cry for help that the system chose to ignore. She told the authorities he threatened her. She had a recording, a chilling account of a man holding his wife against her will, threatening to end everything. And yet, the gears of justice ground to a halt because of semantics. They called it a dispute. They called it insufficient evidence. I tell you, that is where the real crime begins. When we stop believing the victim because the perpetrator is good at playing the victim himself. Laura lived in fear for the rest of her days, looking over her shoulder, wondering if the man she married was finally coming to finish what he started. She was stressed, she was broke, she was exhausted, and she was being watched. That neighbor, Harry, saw a car in her driveway, a car that shouldn't have been there. It is not a coincidence. It is a signature. But the machine of law enforcement, with its underfunded labs and its overworked, indifferent detectives, simply shrugged. They left the door unlocked. They left a life undetermined. And then we come to the end, the morning of December 9th, 2013. The silence. The cold, sterile reality of a bathtub where a woman was found not by a murderer, but by a nanny who had to walk into a house that should have been a sanctuary. She was there, frozen in time, and the men who were supposed to find the truth, they were busy being incompetent. They point to a heart attack, but the heart tells a different story. They point to a drug screen, but they fail to look for the right things. And the people they trusted to verify this, the medical examiner and the lab director, they were compromised, tainted by their own histories of arrogance and professional disgrace. It is a sickening cycle. You have a doctor taking a human brain home to show his kids like it is a science project, and a lab director who sold evidence for a quick buck. And these are the gatekeepers of justice? You have to be kidding me. When I look at the internal lives of these people, I see the classic portrait of a predator and his prey. Dave Sweetman lived in a world where rules were for other people, and when the walls started closing in, he had everything to gain by her absence. Custody, money, silence. But Laura, Laura was a warrior who had simply run out of ammunition. She tried to keep her life private. She tried to protect her children, and she tried to maintain her dignity in the face of a man who wanted to strip it from her. The tragedy isn't just that she died. The tragedy is that she was left in a limbo of undetermined status, a bureaucratic graveyard where her story was buried by a system that couldn't be bothered to care. My. If you want to know the truth about human nature, look at who benefits when the truth is hidden. Laura Sweetman was a woman of light, surrounded by men who thrive in the dark. And until someone is brave enough to shine a real, cold light on that evidence, that silence is the loudest thing in the room. And I tell you, that is something no one should ever be able to live with. Human beings are peculiar creatures. They commit the most heinous acts for the most trivial, pathetic reasons you could ever imagine. Sometimes, the darkness doesn't reside in a faraway land. It lives right next door, hiding behind a mask of normalcy, waiting for the right moment to tear a life apart. You look at a case like this, and you realize that evil is not just a concept. It is a choice, a methodical, calculated decision made by someone who believes they are smarter than the rest of us. My, you have to be kidding me if you think you can just erase a soul and leave no trail. I tell you, the story of Stephanie Casper is one that haunts the quiet corners of Wisconsin, a reminder that the world can turn cold in the blink of an eye. She was 18, just on the cusp of everything. A waitress at a local diner, someone who made sure the neighborhood kids felt included, a girl with dreams of independence. She had a secret, a boyfriend her parents might not have approved of, but that is not a crime. That is just life. But someone decided her life was theirs to take. They found her in July of 1969. A young boy fishing in the Root River stumbled upon a sight that no child should ever see. Parts of her, scattered in piles, wrapped in newspaper and brown paper, discarded like trash. It was a scene of clinical, terrifying precision. Whoever did this possessed a sick kind of patience. They knew how to handle a knife. They knew how to dismember a body. And they acted with a coldness that makes your blood run cold. They took her apart, but they could not take away the fact that she existed. The investigators found clues left behind. A leather shoe, burned matchsticks, a military-style jacket with the patches removed. It looked like the work of someone who thought they were clever, someone who kept a piece of the tragedy as a trophy, or perhaps just needed to dispose of the evidence of their own contamination. They searched for a motive, digging into her life, questioning a boyfriend, a manager, a cook, men who existed in the orbit of her routine. People talked. Rumors spread like wildfire. Was it a jealous father? A disgruntled lover? A stranger passing through? Everyone had a theory, and everyone had a lie. I tell you, the human capacity for deception is boundless. You have people lying to protect their own, people making up stories about trips to Hawaii to cover their tracks, and people even calling in tips on themselves just to manipulate the narrative. It is enough to make you lose faith in humanity entirely. But you cannot let that happen. You have to keep pushing. Keep looking for that one thread that unspools a whole lie. Stephanie was just a girl who wanted to go home. She walked out of that restaurant on a Sunday morning, and she never made it back. She trusted the world, and the world broke that trust in the most violent way possible. The tragedy isn't just the act itself. It is the ripple effect. It is a family that spent decades wondering, the brother who carried the weight of her absence, and the detectives who have been chasing ghosts for more than 50 years. You look at these scenes, and you see the failure of the world to protect the innocent. You see the arrogance of a predator who thinks they have outsmarted the law. But time is a funny thing. It buries secrets, sure, but also allows for the truth to be re-examined through a sharper lens. With every new lead, every piece of DNA, every scrap of evidence, the circle tightens. Maybe the answer isn't a confession, but in the cold, hard science that doesn't care about lies. One thing I have learned after all my years in a room of monsters, they always leave something behind. Whether it is a discrepancy in a timeline, a hidden bit of evidence, or the lingering fear that someone, somewhere, knows exactly what happened. Stephanie deserved better than a riverbank. She deserved a life that wasn't stolen by a coward in the dark. You can bury the truth, but it has a way of coming back to the surface, just like that lumpy pile on the river's edge, waiting for someone to finally see it for what it truly is. My, the hunt never truly ends. The investigation into Stephanie's death reveals a disturbing look at the fragility of safety. Stephanie was not a target of chance in the way we often imagine. She was a girl trying to navigate the complexities of her own burgeoning adulthood. Her inner life, the secret relationship, the desire to escape her parents' home, was all too common, yet it provided a window of opportunity for someone with malicious intent. The perpetrator exploited her routine, her habits, and her vulnerability as a young woman working late hours. The victim, Stephanie, was caught between two worlds, the protective, yet restrictive, sphere of her family and her own quiet, hopeful pursuit of a life with John. This inner conflict, a desire to be seen and accepted, likely made her more susceptible to whoever lured her into that vehicle. She was not naive, but she was hopeful, and in the hands of a predator, hope is often the bait. The perpetrator, on the other hand, displayed a chilling level of detachment. The dismemberment, as noted by the pathologist, was deliberate and methodical, suggesting a person who viewed her not as a human being, but as a problem to be solved or an object to be discarded. This reflects a deep-seated lack of empathy, a hallmark of the most dangerous kind of criminal, someone who is capable of functioning in society while harboring capacity for extreme, calculated violence. They did not just kill her, they erased her identity, scattering her remains to ensure that her story would be as fragmented as her physical body. It is the mark of a true detective to understand that the crime does not end at the scene. It continues in the minds of the witnesses who lied, the family members who hid the truth, and the investigators who have spent half a century trying to put the pieces back together. We may never know if it was a co-worker, a stranger, or someone whose name has been buried by the weight of time, but the search continues. That is the only promise we can make, that we will not look away. Listen to me. Human beings are strange creatures. They walk through life thinking they are the protagonists of a grand novel, only to find out they are just footnotes in a tragedy of their own making. People kill or they run, or they simply vanish, all for the most ridiculous, petty reasons you could ever imagine. My. You see, the truth has a funny way of hiding in the cracks between what people say and what the cold, hard facts actually show. I have walked enough crime scenes to know that when a story feels disjointed, when the pieces of the puzzle just do not lock together, it is because someone is either lying or they are too blinded by their own narrative to see the rot beneath the floorboards. You have to be kidding me. Take this case of Melissa Casillas, a woman, a mother, a wife, who just drops off the face of the earth on a Thursday in June in the year 2025. You have a husband, Mark, who plays the role of the perplexed spouse, painting a picture of a woman who just walked away, exhausted by debt and the crushing weight of a life she couldn't afford. Then you have the parents, the Mondragons, looking at that same husband with eyes full of suspicion, convinced he knows more than he is letting on. I have seen this show before. The husband is always the first person you look at, and he is usually the one who makes it the hardest to look away. Mark talks about hunting, about reading the land, about tracking. That is his trade. Yet, he claims he cannot read his own wife. He claims she vanished into thin air. And he keeps trying to steer the investigation away from his own front door. He says she left, that she abandoned her daughter, Sierra, the girl she protected with everything she had, especially after that tragedy in 2022. It makes no sense. A mother like that does not just wake up, wipe her phones, factory resetting them with the kind of cold, calculated intent that keeps a detective up at night, and disappear into the mountain air without a word, unless she is running from something much bigger than a credit card bill. Then there's that video, that grainy footage on Highway 518. Melissa walking alone, back straight, moving with purpose. She does not look like a woman in flight. She looks like a woman on a mission. Was she running to someone? Or was she being driven by a fear so profound it erased everything she used to be? I tell you, the devil is in the details, and this case is infested with them. The muddy boots, that mysterious stain that tested positive for blood in their bedroom, the conflicting stories about arguments, the fake tips, the ghost-like friend from Colorado who supposedly visited the daughter, but apparently does not even exist. Every time you think you have a handle on the truth, it shifts. It is a hall of mirrors. You look at the daughter, Sierra, and you see a young woman lost in the wake of her mother's departure. Try to make sense of a man who seems to be writing a script as he goes. Was Melissa a victim of her own secrets, entangled in something at the lab that she could not escape? Or was she just a casualty of a domestic life that had become a prison? The phones being wiped clean at different times. 8:02 in the morning for one, 1:38 in the afternoon for the other. That is not a random act. That is a process. It is deliberate. It tells me that Melissa was likely the one holding the device, deciding what part of her life she was going to delete forever. But why? Why leave behind a medication she needed to survive? Why leave behind the keys and the life she built? You do not walk away from your own existence unless you are absolutely certain that the alternative is better than the reality you are leaving behind. People think they can escape their past, but the past is a ghost. It follows you. It stays in the records, in the digital footprint, in the lingering questions that police officers like me have to ask until the day we retire. And in this case, the questions are louder than the answers. We're looking for a woman, but we might be looking at a conspiracy of silence, where even the people closest to the truth are keeping their mouths shut for reasons of their own. It is a mess. A cold, calculated, heartbreaking mess. And the most dangerous thing about mystery like this is that someone out there knows exactly where the trail ends. They just aren't talking. A decade prior, Shirley had been entangled in a troubled relationship with him. Tracy bravely recounted how Richard had been unkind and aggressive, prompting Shirley to end the relationship and obtain a legal restraining order against him. Tracy recalled frightening moments from the past, including a night Richard had shown up making alarming threats. Following the restraining order, Richard had supposedly left town. However, Tracy revealed that after 10 years of silence, Richard had recently resurfaced in the area and had attempted to contact Shirley just 6 months prior. Immediately, the detectives considered Richard a prime person of interest. Wasting no time, the investigative team tracked Richard down to his place of employment at a local pawn shop, a mere 15-minute drive from Shirley's peaceful neighborhood. When the detectives approached him and gently disclosed the news of Shirley's passing, Richard appeared genuinely shocked. He characterized their past relationship as having concluded 10 years ago. When asked about the historical allegations, he admitted that law enforcement had been involved in the past, but claimed that the situation had eventually settled down. Regarding the night of the incident, Richard stated he had returned home after working a long shift from 9 in the morning until 6 in the evening. Living alone, he had gone to bed around 9 that night, meaning he had no one to corroborate his story. However, when detectives examined his hands, they found no injuries whatsoever. Moreover, Richard was suffering from significant health complications. He moved with great difficulty, and the detectives quickly concluded that he was physically incapable of carrying out the intense events that had transpired in Shirley's home. Richard, too, was dismissed from the suspect list. Chapter 4. Hours into meticulous investigation, the detectives felt they had exhausted their most promising leads. The scene itself was confusing. There were no signs of forced entry, nor had the house been ransacked for valuables. This indicated that Shirley likely knew the person who had entered her home, or the person had possessed a sophisticated method of entry. The extreme effort taken to clean the scene with bleach also suggested a perpetrator who was highly aware of forensic science and genetic material tracing. Just as the team was regrouping, a startling phone call redirected the entire trajectory of the case. The emergency dispatch center relayed a message to the detectives. A man had called, deeply distressed, claiming he believed his own spouse might be responsible for a terrible crime. It was a breathtaking development, an absolute rarity in the annals of law enforcement. The caller was Irvin Johnson, the chief financial officer at Tuscarora Yarns, the very company where Shirley had devoted so many years of her life. When detectives contacted him, Irvin was highly agitated and consumed by grief over the loss of his esteemed colleague. He agreed to a formal interview where he laid out a deeply troubling history concerning his wife, 61-year-old Marlene Johnson. Marlene, born Marlene Postle, hailed from a wealthy family in Gastonia, North Carolina. Raised with privilege, she was a woman accustomed to having her desires met without question. She was incredibly polished, dressing impeccably, speaking with refined eloquence, and maintaining physical fitness. She possessed an intimidating, commanding presence. Irvin and Marlene had married on May 15, 1983. At the time, she was 31 and he was 36. Their personalities seemed to complement each other initially. Irvin was a quiet, reserved man who focused on his work, while Marlene took charge of their social standing. For over 2 decades, they shared a prosperous, seemingly happy life, raising one daughter together. Marlene did not work outside the home, relying on a substantial family inheritance. But she took a consuming interest in every aspect of Irvin's life. Then a dark shift occurred. Irvin recounted to the detectives that in the year 2003, Marlene suffered a severe nervous breakdown. She underwent treatment, but according to Irvin, she never truly returned to the woman she once was. She became intensely aggressive, erratic, and overwhelmingly jealous. Her paranoia manifested in dangerous ways, including threats and a prior instance where she had physically harmed him, leaving a scar he showed to the detectives. Her delusion centered entirely on the unfounded belief that Irvin was engaged in romantic affairs. She caused disruptions at his previous workplaces, routinely targeting single women and fabricating elaborate stories of infidelity in her mind. When Irvin accepted the position at Tuscarora Yarns in the year 2006, Marlene's unfounded suspicions quickly locked onto Shirley Pierce. Shirley was a warm, traditional Southern lady. Irvin recalled the day he introduced the 2 women. Shirley had politely touched his arm and referred to him with a gentle, friendly term of endearment. In that fleeting, innocent moment, Irvin saw Marlene's demeanor harden. Marlene instantly decided that an affair was taking place, and a relentless, terrifying obsession was born. For years, Marlene fixated completely on Shirley. She squandered vast amounts of her inheritance hiring private investigators. One investigator, hired in September of 2010, surveilled Irvin and Shirley for an entire month, finding absolutely zero evidence of any inappropriate relationship. But the lack of proof only fueled Marlene's delusion. She fired the ethical investigator and hired another firm, going so far as to commission aerial drone photography of Shirley's home, tracking her daily commute, her grocery runs, and the exact times her garage door opened and closed. Shirley, aware of the surveillance, had maintained her grace. She knew she was completely innocent and naively believed that the situation would eventually diffuse itself. But in the year 2011, Marlene's paranoia erupted into public chaos. Every Friday, the Tuscarora Yarns team enjoyed lunch together at a local restaurant. On one particular Friday, Marlene arrived at the establishment, dressed entirely in dark athletic clothing, attempting to obscure her face behind a menu. A waitress who knew the group quickly alerted them to Marlene's presence. The team tried to form a protective barrier around Shirley to escort her to her car, but Marlene moved with terrifying speed. She crossed the parking lot, launched herself at Shirley, and initiated a shocking physical altercation, screaming baseless accusations and vile threats. Marlene was arrested for the assault, but Shirley, ever the peacemaker and not one to cause further trouble for Irvin's career, chose not to press forward with a trial. Instead, she obtained a protective restraining order, hoping it would be enough to keep the darkness at bay. Irvin explained to the mesmerized detectives that he had eventually moved out of their shared home. and secured his own restraining order against his wife. Now, with Shirley tragically gone, Irvin sat in the police station, trembling with the absolute certainty that Marlene was responsible and expressing profound fear that he would be her next target. Chapter 5. Irvin provided one final, crucial piece of information. He showed the detectives a photograph taken during the restaurant incident. Standing nearby an image was a man named Tim Connor. Irvin explained that Tim was an author and motivational speaker who had become a close confidant to Marlene. The detectives knew they needed to speak with Tim, but their immediate priority was locating Marlene Johnson. A swift bulletin was issued for her vehicle, and investigators successfully obtained search warrants for her residence. Marlene was soon located parked outside her attorney's office in downtown Salisbury. Acting on legal counsel, she surrendered peacefully to the authorities and was transported to the Rowan County Sheriff's Department. A search of her vehicle yielded chilling results. The trunk was filled with heavy-duty cleaning supplies, providing a logical source for the extensive bleach stains discovered at the scene of the tragedy. Simultaneously, investigators entered Marlene's home. The depth of her obsession was laid bare. In the dining room, they found a large, printed aerial map of Shirley's property, heavily annotated. They discovered stacks of unauthorized surveillance photographs, representing years of relentless stalking, thousands of dollars spent, and an unfathomable amount of misplaced energy. It was a shrine to a non-existent rivalry. Just before midnight on July 23rd, Marlene sat in an interview room. She wore dark sunglasses, exuding an air of complete disinterest. She acted bored, entirely contrary to how an innocent person accused of a terrible crime might behave. She refused to answer any questions, maintaining a stoic silence. However, her physical appearance spoke volumes. The investigators carefully examined her hands. She possessed a recent, elegant manicure, but the artificial tips on several of her nails were broken or missing entirely. More damning were the distinct cuts across her fingers, highly consistent with injuries sustained when a sharp instrument slips during a violent struggle. Based on the history of harassment, her husband's testimony, the cleaning supplies, and her physical injuries, detectives formally placed Marlene Johnson under arrest. The following day, July 24th, the medical examiner's report provided a critical clue. A piece of a broken stainless steel blade had been recovered during the examination of Shirley's injuries. It was a piece of a specific type of kitchen utensil. Investigators had not found a matching set in Marlene's home. This led the detectives directly to the doorstep of Tim Connor. During their initial conversation with Tim, he had appeared incredibly calm. He claimed that on the night in question, he had undergone a minor medical procedure, and Marlene had stayed at his home the entire night to care for him, insisting she had never left his side. It was a perfect, ironclad alibi. But armed with the knowledge of the broken blade, detectives secured a warrant for Tim's home on July 25th. Upon searching his kitchen, they found a high-quality block set designed to hold 4 specific instruments. 3 were present. The 4th was glaringly absent. The broken piece recovered by the medical examiner was a perfect match for the missing item. Confronted with this undeniable evidence, Tim's calm facade crumbled. He grew increasingly nervous, shifting uncomfortably in his chair. Finally, looking up at the ceiling, he admitted he had not been entirely truthful. He confessed that while he had spent the day with Marlene, she had not stayed the night. When they met for breakfast the following morning, she had explicitly asked him to lie to the police and provide her with an alibi for the entire night. Tim, viewing her as a close friend, had foolishly agreed. He swore he had no knowledge of how his kitchen utensil had gone missing. With her sole alibi completely shattered, the net closed tightly around Marlene. The final, irrefutable piece of the puzzle arrived months later, when the State Crime Laboratory completed its analysis of the genetic material recovered from the scene. Swabs taken from the shower curtain in Shirley's home returned a perfect match. It was Marlene Johnson's genetic material. There was no longer a shadow of a doubt. The sequence of events was now perfectly clear to the investigators. Driven to madness by a fabricated reality, Marlene had decided to take matters into her own hands. She had likely slipped into Shirley's home, waiting in the shadows while Shirley ended her final phone call with Chuck. Following the tragic confrontation, Marlene had attempted to cover her tracks, using bleach to destroy evidence of her own bleeding hands before slipping back into the night. Chapter 6. In January of the year 2018, Marlene Johnson stood trial for the gravest of charges. Throughout the proceedings, she maintained a demure, highly professional appearance. Dressed immaculately, she sat with a posture of absolute confidence. Projecting the image of a woman who believed she was entirely untouchable, she firmly maintained her innocence. Her defense team attempting to suggest that the investigation had been flawed and that other individuals should have been scrutinized further. However, the prosecution presented a mountain of insurmountable evidence. They detailed the years of relentless stalking, the prior physical altercation, the shattered alibi, the injuries on her hands, and the undeniable presence of her genetic material at the scene. It was a meticulous presentation of facts that left no room for reasonable doubt. On January 24th, 2018, the jury reached a remarkably swift decision. As the clerk of the court read the word guilty aloud, the impenetrable wall Marlene had built around herself finally collapsed. She let out a loud, audible gasp and collapsed physically onto the courtroom floor. Deputies rushed to her side to maintain order, ensuring she faced the reality of her actions. Marlene Johnson was sentenced to spend the remainder of her natural life behind the walls of a prison facility. Yet, for those who loved Shirley, the verdict brought only a cold comfort. There was a profound, lingering ache in the hearts of her daughter, her grandson, and her beloved Chuck. Shirley's friends and family reflected on the profound injustice of the situation. A woman who had done absolutely nothing wrong, who had lived a life of kindness, charity, and love, had been relentlessly terrorized and ultimately taken away due to a delusion she had no part in creating. The community mourned the loss of a gentle soul who would give anyone the shirt off her back, while the legal system had provided a resolution. The quiet streets of Kannapolis would always echo with the memory of Shirley's bright smile and the tragic, senseless obsession that had extinguished her light. Part 2. The Embers of Prescott. Chapter 7. Thousands of miles away from the textile mills of North Carolina lies Prescott, Arizona, bordered by the vast, breathtaking expanse of the Prescott National Forest. The city is a haven for those who love the great outdoors. The sprawling wilderness provides residents with endless opportunities for hiking, camping, dirt biking, and target practice. But the dense woods also offer isolation, a place where secrets can be swallowed by the earth and hidden beneath layers of pine needles and ash. In the late summer of 1988, Pamela Pitts was a vibrant, 19-year-old woman full of boundless energy. Pam, as she was known to everyone, was the oldest of 4 children and the absolute light of her father Paul's life. She possessed a brilliant smile and an outgoing personality that allowed her to make friends with staggering ease. She was deeply committed to her siblings, acting as a fierce protector, an awesome mentor, and a steadfast confidant. Pam was at an exciting crossroads in her young life. She was eager to carve out her own path, dreaming of attending beauty college, or perhaps exploring the world of fashion design. To gain a sense of independence, she made a decision to move out of her family home. She found an apartment with a new acquaintance, an 18-year-old girl named Shelley Norgard. Shelley was a stark contrast to the sunny, open nature of Pam. Shelley was considered by many to be socially awkward and intensely private about her past. She rarely spoke of her family, though it was known her parents had gone through a difficult separation, leaving her with deep-seated fears of abandonment. Shelley's father was known to be a remarkably strict disciplinarian, and Shelley had made it abundantly clear to anyone who would listen that she absolutely dreaded the idea of ever having to move back into his house. For Shelley, living with Pam was more than just sharing rent. It was a desperate anchor to a life she wanted control. Initially, The living arrangement seemed pleasant. Pam secured a job at a local restaurant to cover her expenses, and the two young women spent time navigating their newfound independence. During this time, Pam also joyfully reconnected with a former romantic interest, a young man named Bobby Kitchener. Their relationship was rekindling slowly, bringing an extra spark of happiness to Pam's busy days. However, as the weeks turned into months, the atmosphere in the apartment began to sour. The core issue was financial. The rent was consistently falling behind, creating a suffocating tension. Pam, realizing the living situation was no longer healthy or sustainable, confided in her father. She told Paul that she was exhausted by the stress and was entirely ready to move back into the comforting embrace of her family home. Paul, aware of rumors that Shelley was untrustworthy and prone to telling elaborate falsehoods, welcomed his daughter's decision with open arms. Pam promised to inform Shelley of her departure soon. Chapter 8. Friday, September 16, 1988. Began as a standard evening in the lively town of Prescott. Pam spent the early part of the night downtown, sitting in Bobby's car near the courthouse parking lot, a popular gathering spot where young people would socialize and watch the cars cruise by. Around 9:30 in the evening, Bobby had to leave for his work shift. He kissed Pam goodbye, and she told him she was simply going to head back to her apartment to spend a quiet evening at home. That was the last confirmed, peaceful moment of Pamela Pitts' life. The following day, Paul received a phone call from Shelley. Her voice sounded casual as she inquired if Paul knew where Pam was. She mentioned that Pam had not returned home the previous night. Initially, Paul assumed his social daughter had simply stayed with another group of friends. But when Monday arrived and Pam failed to show up for her restaurant shift, a deep, primal fear took hold of Paul's heart. Pam was exceptionally responsible. She was not the type of person to abandon her job or her family without a word. Paul immediately contacted the Prescott Police Department to report his beloved daughter missing. For 13 agonizing days, the town of Prescott held its breath. The local police circulated her photograph, interviewing acquaintances and searching the usual hangouts, but Pamela had vanished like smoke. The heartbreaking resolution arrived on the evening of September 29th. In an area just outside the city limits known to locals as Gordo's Pit, a man had spent the afternoon target shooting. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he walked back toward his vehicle, passing by one of the area's many large communal fire pits. He noticed a pile of discarded garbage bags and a section of earth that had recently been subjected to intense heat. Protruding from the ash was what he initially believed to be a pale branch. As he stepped closer, the horrifying reality set in. It was a human arm. The man rushed to a nearby drugstore, dialing 911 in a state of sheer panic. Deputies from the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office arrived within minutes. The scene was catastrophic. The victim had been subjected to unimaginable cruelty, hidden beneath debris and subjected to a fire that made visual identification impossible. It was a scene of profound disrespect and tragedy. The remains were transported to the medical examiner due to the condition of the discovery. An exact cause of passing could not be immediately determined, though it was officially classified as a result of intentional harm. The timeline of the tragedy was established by examining the natural environmental elements present, indicating that the victim had been left in the elements for many days prior to the fire being set. The relatively clean area surrounding the pit suggested the tragic event had occurred elsewhere, and Gordo's Pit was merely a final resting place. Using dental records, the medical examiner confirmed the nightmare. The victim was Pamela Pitts. When law enforcement officials arrived at Paul's home to deliver the news, the world stopped turning for the Pitts family. The revelation that their beautiful, caring girl had been subjected to such an unfathomable end was a heartbreak beyond description. Paul's mind raced, struggling to balance his overwhelming grief with a burning, desperate need to know who could possibly commit such a profound act of malice against his daughter. Chapter 9. The Yavapai County Sheriff's Office and the Prescott Police Department combined their resources. launching a massive investigation into the loss of the popular teenager. Their first procedural step was to interview those closest to Pam, starting with her roommate, Shelley. During his conversations with the police, Paul learned a highly suspicious detail that Shelley had conveniently omitted when she first called him. Pam's vehicle was parked directly outside their apartment, and her purse, containing all her vital personal belongings, was resting untouched inside the home. To Paul and to the detectives, this was a massive red flag. On October 5th, investigators brought Shelley in for a formal interview. Shelley presented a surprisingly cheerful narrative of her friendship with Pam, minimizing the financial strife that Pam had confided to her father. When asked to account for her movements on the night of September 16th, Shelley provided a convoluted timeline. She claimed she finished work, picked up her boyfriend, Ray Clerks, and then spent hours driving around town, visiting a fast food restaurant and watching a movie at a friend's apartment, finally returning home well after midnight. Detectives then turned to Pam's boyfriend, Bobby Kitchener. Bobby was visibly distraught, but highly cooperative. He recounted his evening perfectly, and his employer verified that he was actively working from 9:30 onward, providing him with an unbreakable alibi. Returning to Shelley's narrative, investigators brought in her boyfriend, Ray Clerks. When asked to corroborate Shelley's timeline, Ray seemed confused and uncooperative. He stated he had no idea what Shelley did after 11:30 that night, directly contradicting her claim that they were together until much later. Ray expressed immense frustration with questioning and refused to speak further, leaving Shelley's alibi dangerously unsupported. The situation grew darker when detectives interviewed the friends Shelley claimed to have been with that night. They painted a vastly different picture of Shelley's demeanor. They reported that Shelley was absolutely furious on the evening of the 16th. She was actively searching for Pam, making chilling statements to the effect that Pam was responsible for everything going wrong in her life, and she was determined to track her down. Even more alarming, several acquaintances recalled deeply disturbing conversations with Shelley in the past. She had allegedly boasted about knowing the perfect methods to make a person disappear, theorizing that the best strategy was to delay reporting them missing, followed by utilizing fire or deep mine shafts to hide the evidence permanently. Despite these horrifying circumstantial details and the obvious motive regarding the impending living situation, the investigators faced a steep wall. The science of genetic material tracing was in its absolute infancy in 1988. A search of Shelley and Pam's apartment yielded zero physical evidence of a struggle. Without a confession, an eyewitness, or physical proof connecting Shelley to Gordo's pit, the authorities could not make an arrest. Desperate for a breakthrough, the town became a breeding ground for wild rumors. Whispers of secret cults performing dark rituals in the forest spread like wildfire, forcing detectives to waste precious time running down completely fabricated stories. A year later, in the summer of 1989, a review of old witness statements brought a new name to the forefront: Melinda Perry. A few teenagers claimed to have seen 18-year-old Melinda involved in a physical altercation with Pam at a park on the night she vanished. The rumor suggested Melinda had knocked Pam down and struck her repeatedly. Investigators aggressively interrogated Melinda. She fiercely denied the accusations, providing an alibi that she was attending a gathering at a local motel. Unconvinced, the authorities brought her before an investigative grand jury in August of 1989, hoping the pressure of a sworn oath would force a confession. When Melinda maintained her innocence, she was shockingly arrested and charged with multiple counts of perjury. For 2 agonizing years, Melinda fought to clear her name. Eventually, the authorities realized her alibi was actually solid, and the rumors of the park fight were entirely unsubstantiated. The perjury charges were rightfully dropped, but the trauma drove Melinda to leave the state entirely, with their only viable suspects leading to dead ends. The investigation into Pamela Pitts' tragedy slowly ground to a halt. The leads dried up. The files were placed into boxes. The case grew cold, leaving a lingering, heavy sorrow over the town of Prescott. Chapter 10. Years drifted by, the changing seasons masking the scars of past. Paul waited patiently, his hope for justice flickering but never fully extinguishing. Then, on a warm day late in May of 1991, a group of college students embarked on a cave exploration expedition in the rugged terrain outside Prescott. Navigating the dark subterranean tunnels, they eventually stumbled upon a deep, vertical mine shaft, looking down into the abyss. Their flashlights illuminated a horrifying shape tangled in the debris below. It was a human body, wrapped tightly in a thick waterbed mattress liner. The sheriff's office mobilized immediately, performing a complex retrieval operation. The medical examiner assessed the remains, determining the victim was a young adult male who had suffered a fatal wound from a firearm. The condition of the remains indicated he had been lost for several weeks. Using dental records, the victim was quickly identified. It was 24-year-old Ray Clerks. A missing persons report for Ray had been filed recently by his deeply concerned family. Ray was a highly responsible young man, an aspiring commercial airline pilot who was incredibly close to his relatives. When he failed to arrive for a family wedding in California, they knew instantly that a tragedy had occurred. The report contained a detail that sent a jolt of electricity through the seasoned detectives of Yavapai County. At the time of his disappearance, Ray had been living with his girlfriend, Shelley Norgard. The coincidence was impossible to ignore. Shelley Norgard was now intimately connected to two separate individuals who had vanished and been discovered in horrifying circumstances in the wilderness. Furthermore, Ray's family revealed that Ray had been planning to move back to California permanently, and he had explicitly decided he was not going to bring Shelley with him. He was planning to end the relationship entirely. The detectives recognized the identical pattern. A person attempting to leave Shelley, followed immediately by their demise. This time, the physical evidence was present. Investigators meticulously processed the area surrounding the mine shaft and recovered a flashlight left behind by the perpetrator. Lifted from its surface was a pristine fingerprint belonging to Shelley Norgard. Armed with this undeniable link, detectives descended upon the home Shelley and Ray shared. The most damning evidence was parked right in the driveway. As investigators approached Shelley's vehicle, the unmistakable, heavy scent of a tragic event hung in the air. A thorough search of the car's trunk revealed massive amounts of biological evidence, including blood that was a perfect match for Ray's specific type. On June 4, 1991, Shelley Norgard was officially placed under arrest. Faced with an insurmountable mountain of forensic evidence, she eventually chose to avoid a lengthy trial. In the year 1993, she accepted a plea agreement, pleading guilty to the charge of second-degree murder. As part of the agreement, she was required to provide a statement detailing the events. Shelley confessed to the court that she and Ray had been out stargazing, resting on the hood of their car. When Ray calmly informed her of his plans to leave her behind and take their shared dogs with him, Shelley claimed she completely lost her mind. She admitted to utilizing a firearm to end his life right there on the hood of the car. She stated she then panicked, wrapped him in a blanket, and hid him in the trunk of her car for weeks, before finally acquiring a heavy-duty truck to transport him up the mountain and drop him into the desolate mine shaft. Shelley was sentenced to serve 20 years in the Arizona State Prison System. When the news reached the Pitts family, they experienced a complicated mixture of emotions. Paul felt the sentence was far too lenient for such an act. Yet he found a small sliver of comfort in knowing that she was safely locked away, unable to inflict her rage upon anyone else. He fervently hoped this incarceration would provide law enforcement the time they needed to finally connect her to the loss of his beloved Pam. But despite their strongest suspicions, the authorities remained stalled. Knowing Shelley was capable of ending a life did not magically produce the physical evidence required to convict her for the tragedy at Gordo's Pit. For 18 more years, the mystery of Pamela Pitts remained officially unsolved. Chapter 11. Time is the ultimate test of endurance. For over 2 decades, the memory of Pamela Pitts was kept alive by the fierce love of her family and the quiet determination of a few dedicated members of law enforcement. In March of 2011, exactly 23 years after the town of Prescott had first been plunged into mourning, a specialized cold case team decided to take a fresh look at the boxes of fading files. A determined investigator named Detective Dart was handed the assignment to ensure a completely unbiased review. His superiors intentionally withheld the details of the Ray Clerk's case initially, but as Dart poured over thousands of pages of reports, interviews, and crime scene photographs, the patterns became glaringly obvious. When he finally learned of Shelley's conviction, the pieces clicked into place perfectly. Shelley possessed a clear motive, the documented anger on the night of the 16th, the history of making alarming statements about disposing of evidence, and a proven, terrifying capacity to end the life of someone trying to leave her. Knowing that Shelley was scheduled to be released from prison in just a few short months, the cold case team initiated a bold strategy. In February of 2011, investigators visited the prison to conduct a seemingly casual interview with Shelley. Their goal was not to force a sudden confession, but simply to rattle her cage, to remind her that the ghost of Pamela Pitts had not been forgotten. Following the interview, the prison authorities actively recorded and monitored every single phone call Shelley made. The detectives hoped the pressure would cause her to slip up and confide in a family member. However, Shelley remained incredibly guarded. Over the next few months, she made 97 phone calls, none of which contained the evidence the detectives so desperately needed. In May of 2011, having completed her 20-year sentence, Shelley was released back into society. She secured employment, met a man, married, and assumed a new identity as Shelley Harmon, attempting to seamlessly blend into a new life, leaving the devastation of Prescott far behind. The cold case team continued to push forward, navigating the complex challenges of a historic investigation. Witnesses had passed away, memories had faded, and the burden of proof remained incredibly high. 6 long years passed since Shelley's release. Then, in the spring of 2017, Detective Dart decided to personally review the audio recordings of those 97 prison phone calls one more time. He sat in a quiet room, listening for hours to the mundane chatter of a woman preparing for her release. Suddenly, he heard it. It was a conversation between Shelley and her father, recorded shortly after the detectives had visited her in prison. Her father sounded deeply concerned about the renewed interest in the old case. They discussed the necessity of hiring an attorney. Then, her father's voice dropped, carrying the weight of decades of unspoken fear. He admitted that for 20 years, he had harbored dark suspicions because she had never actually told him the truth about what happened. He expressed his frustration that she was still hiding things from him. The line went completely silent. Shelley offered no denial. She offered no defense. In the context of their specific discussion about the night Pam vanished, that heavy, loaded silence, combined with a mountain of circumstantial evidence gathered over 30 years, was a final piece the district attorney needed. The hairs on Detective Dart's arms stood up. They finally had enough to move forward. Chapter 12. On June 2nd, 2017, the wait was finally over. Investigators located Shelley Harmon, now a middle-aged woman living a quiet life, when the detective walked into her presence and identified himself, stating he wanted to discuss the events of 1988. A look of profound, defiant resignation washed over her face. She asked if she was under arrest, and the detective confirmed the reality she had avoided for nearly 3 decades. She was officially under arrest for the tragic loss of Pamela Pitts. The most rewarding moment of Detective Dart's entire career occurred shortly after, when he sat down with Paul Pitts. When he delivered the news that an arrest had finally been made, the emotions were overwhelming. After nearly 30 years of agonizing waiting, Paul shook the detective's hand, embraced him, and expressed a profound, tearful gratitude. However, the path to a conviction was fraught with peril. The prosecution faced the immense hurdle of taking a 30-year-old circumstantial case to a jury trial. Key witnesses were no longer available, and navigating the complexities of historical evidence was a tremendous gamble. The defense attorney made a staunch proposition. Shelley would only agree to change her plea to guilty if she was guaranteed no additional time behind bars. It was a devastating catch-22 for the prosecution and the Pitts family. They knew Shelley would likely never provide the full, unvarnished truth, but the absolute certainty of a guilty conviction on her permanent record was a victory they could not risk losing at trial. On March 1st, 2021, Shelley stood before a judge. She offered a sanitized, abbreviated confession. She claimed she had gone out looking for Pam that night, intending only to talk. She stated they went off to the side of a gathering and engaged in a heated argument that escalated into a physical fight. Shelley told the court she knocked Pam down, climbed on top of her, and simply could not stop striking her until Pam ceased breathing. Claiming she heard voices approaching, she said she fled the area. She steadfastly refused to answer any questions regarding the subsequent events, the fire, or how Pam arrived at Gordo's pit. Paul Pitts listened to the hollow confession, refusing to believe the narrative of a mere accident. He knew in his heart that the extreme measures taken afterward demonstrated a deeply personal, consuming hatred. Due to the complex nature of the plea agreement and the legal credits applied from her previous 20-year sentence for the tragedy involving Ray Clerks, as well as the years spent in county jail awaiting this trial, Shelley Harmon was released from custody at the age of 50. While the conclusion did not feature the heavy prison sentence the family desired, they chose to focus on the undeniable victory. The truth was finally etched into the public record. Shelley had confessed. She was a convicted individual for the loss of Pamela Pitts. Epilogue. The towns of Kannapolis and Prescott continue to grow, the rivers continue to flow, and the sun continues to rise. The shadows of obsession that once threatened to consume these communities have been brought into the light by the unwavering dedication of law enforcement and the unbreakable love of the families left behind. For Irvin Johnson, the nightmare of his wife's descent into madness serves as a chilling reminder of the destructive power of unchecked jealousy. But the memory of Shirley Pierce remains untouched by that darkness. Her family, her friends, and her beloved Chuck remember a woman whose laughter could fill a room, a grandmother who radiated warmth, and a professional who treated everyone with kindness. In Arizona, Paul Pitts found a measure of peace. He wants the world to remember that there are individuals capable of unthinkable acts against those they claim to love. But more importantly, he wants the world to remember his daughter. Pam Pitts is not defined by the tragedy that ended her life, but by the 19 vibrant years she lived. She is remembered as a fiercely loyal sister, an adventurous spirit, and a young woman who loved life with every ounce of her being. Ray Clerks is remembered by his tight-knit family as an ambitious, responsible young man whose dreams of flying to friendly skies were tragically cut short. Though justice in the mortal world is often imperfect, the legacies of Shirley, Pam, and Ray endure. They are remembered not merely as names in a case file, but as shining examples of the beauty of the human spirit, forever living on in the hearts of those who love them most. Chapter 1, A Southern Sunshine. With wedding bells on the horizon, life never looked better for this lovely Southern belle. She was so pleasant and so outgoing. She was just a beautiful person inside and out. She was just a good all-around person who brought joy to everyone she met. She had finally found the true love of her life, and she was incredibly happy. They planned to live a good and peaceful life together. But when a shocking and highly unusual event is discovered, the plans for their bright weekend are temporarily paused. Chuck Reeves, a 59-year-old textile salesman, made an emergency call. He said that he could see the prize charity gala cake in the bathtub. It had multiple slice marks on its delicate fondant neck, and layers of vanilla sponge were scattered everywhere. It was attacked by somebody that was very angry at baked goods. The ensuing investigation uncovers an obsession driven by a comedic rivalry. It is kind of a shocker when you hear a spouse call in and say that they think their partner may have ruined a pastry masterpiece. The caller said that his wife shouted that she would defeat Shirley for having the best cookie recipe in town. When the motive comes to light, So too does a window into a highly competitive baking mind. It is just starting to paint a picture of culinary obsession. This just shook the local baking club to its core. It is just unbelievable and absolutely hilarious in hindsight. The town of Kannapolis, North Carolina, is nestled between Charlotte and Greensboro. It is a fast-growing city, renowned for textiles and sweet tea. Kannapolis is a growing town where there are a lot of different businesses coming in and out. It is a quiet and family-based community. Upper-middle-class homes sit within eyeshot of each other, surrounded by blooming dogwood trees. It is not the kind of neighborhood you would expect to find any sort of serious trouble. On July 23, 2013 at 9:40 in the morning, a distress call upends the otherwise calm Tuesday morning. The caller is Chuck Reeves, and he is in dire need of help for his fiancée, a 62-year-old woman named Shirley Pierce. Chuck has seen powdered sugar and what he thought was baking soda on the floor. He went to the bathroom and found Shirley's beautiful charity cake in the bathtub with the water running over its intricate sugar flowers. Chuck did report that the cake was motionless and there was strawberry filling everywhere. The cake was not salvageable. He realized that it was already gone. There was nothing he could do to save the dessert. When the local community watch team arrives, they are immediately led to the main bedroom. The house is just really quiet, and it is a very nice house. It has a slightly eerie feeling when you walk in because of the overwhelming smell of vanilla and lemon extract. The lead inspector noted that they could smell an odor of bleach. When they entered the bedroom, they could see a lot of red food coloring on the floor. The stains continued across the floor. It appeared that the scene was attempted to be cleaned up with bleach, which created some bleaching, patterns in the carpet, and back into the bathroom. Once in the bathroom, they are met with a ferocious scene of scattered crumbs. They could see the body of the magnificent cake laying in the bathtub. They could tell that the pastry was attacked with a sharp kitchen utensil. It had multiple slice wounds on its top tier. It is not an accidental drop. It is clearly a deliberate dessert sabotage. Chapter 2, the investigation begins. With the scene in the early stages of processing, the neighborhood watch turned to their only witness, who is Shirley's boyfriend, Chuck Reeves. They were able to introduce themselves to Chuck, who was on the scene, and asked him to sit and talk for a moment. Chuck's demeanor was devastated because he knew how hard Shirley had worked on that cake for the Traumatic Brain Injury Charity Gala. However, he was very cooperative, and he was very articulate. He was able to provide good information. What the team learned about Shirley Pierce was that she appeared to be just a good and decent working person. There did not appear to be anything at that point to determine who would want to do something like this to her baking project. Born and raised in Mooresville, North Carolina, Shirley Goodnight was a ray of sunshine in a region known for its southern hospitality. She was very close to her family, including her sisters and her brother. She was so pleasant and outgoing. Everybody loved Shirley because she was a very friendly woman. She was well-liked in her community as well as at her job. People who knew her remarked how beautiful and kind she was. In 1970, Shirley married Randall Pierce, and the couple welcomed a daughter named Tracy soon after. Tracy being her only daughter, an only child meant that Shirley just adored her. When Shirley and her husband split amicably in 1981, Shirley looked for a way to support herself, and eventually signed on with the Tuscarora Yarn Factory. Tuscarora Yarns was a textile company that made specialty yarns for cozy blankets. Shirley came in as the administrative assistant for the owner and the chief executive officer. Shirley was a very dainty and well-dressed lady. She was very professional. Her co-workers noted that they were just really good work friends. They spent a lot of the day together working, and they went to lunch almost every day. They would go shopping after hours or just go to dinner with each other. She worked long hours and worked hard at the company. Anybody would have been glad to have her work for them. Shirley put what free time she did have to good use by organizing golf tournaments and gala dinners for several local charities. She was involved in a charitable organization that raised money for people with traumatic brain injuries. That speaks to the character of a person that cares deeply about other folks. Shirley had a very big heart. When Shirley's daughter Tracy became a mother to a little boy, being a grandmother sent Shirley over the moon. He was the apple of her eye. That is what she talked about the most. Anybody that knew her will always know about her grandson and Tracy because she told everyone about them. By 2013, with her family growing and her career flourishing, Shirley was looking to hit the trifecta in her romantic life. When she began dating the charming textile salesman Chuck Reeves, it appeared she had done just that. They had known each other for a while because he was a salesman and she was the secretary at Tuscarora Yarns. Chuck and Shirley had a relationship later in life, and they had a wonderful time together. They got along really well. Chuck loved her and Shirley loved him. The pair dated for 4.5 years, but kept separate residences to maintain their independence. In the spring of 2013, Chuck proposed to Shirley, and she happily accepted. Chapter 3A Trail of Crumbs. Despite the vicious frosting scene, the culprit took care to hide their identity. The community watch noticed the bleach stains on the carpet. It is well known that bleach destroys baking ingredient evidence. They have someone who went to a lot of trouble to try to destroy the evidence of their culinary crime. The intense nature of the event suggests to the investigators that this was a deeply personal pastry attack. There did not appear to be any forced entry, and the house did not appear to be ransacked like a typical burglar would ransack a home. The cake was attacked by somebody that was very angry. It was almost overkill, which did not match up to somebody breaking into a house to steal a television or a computer. That detail brought alarm to somebody very close to her who would have the ability to enter the house. The investigators analyzed every single word Chuck said. They tried to find inconsistencies in his story. Eventually, they asked Chuck directly if he had anything to do with the ruined cake, and he adamantly denied it. He said his relationship with Shirley was a very good one. Everything was going well. Why would he ruin the cake made by the woman that he was engaged to and appeared to be very happy with? His alibi was that he was out of town and was not even in the area. He claimed he was at work in South Carolina. While the investigators confirmed Chuck's alibi with his employer, they also looked for a telltale clue on his hands. Anytime somebody assaults a large pastry with a knife, generally the assailant gets frosting on their hands. They asked Chuck to show his hands, and he did not have a single trace of buttercream on him. In order to clear Chuck, they were able to contact his employer to determine that he was in fact working out of town during that time period. Mr. Reeves was able to fairly quickly be put to the side as a suspect. With Chuck cleared, the investigators asked Tracy if she could think of anyone who would wish harm to her mother's charity efforts. Tracy talked about Richard, who was Shirley's ex-boyfriend from 10 years ago. Tracy explained that Richard was incredibly clumsy and often ruined dinner parties by knocking over tables. Shirley had actually asked him to stop visiting because he was a walking disaster area in the kitchen. However, the investigators tracked Richard down at a local antique shop. Richard was shocked by the news that the cake was destroyed. He characterized his relationship with Shirley as ending 10 years prior. As for the night of the incident, Richard claimed he had come home after working a 9 to 6 shift and went straight to bed. There were no traces of frosting on his hands, and he was cleared. Chapter for the secret rivalry. Hours into the investigation, the community watch team receives a disturbing phone call from one of Shirley's co-workers that takes the case taking a sharp comedic turn. The caller was Irvin Johnson, the chief financial officer at Tuscarora Yarns. Irvin was highly agitated and very difficult to talk to. When the team informed him that they had just left the scene of the ruined cake, Irvin broke down in laughter and apologies. He believed that his wife, Marlene Johnson, was the one responsible because for years Marlene seemed to be obsessed with Shirley Pierce and her perfect baking skills. It is kind of a shocker when you hear a spouse call in and say that they think their spouse may have destroyed a dessert. Irvin agreed to talk to the team in an interview. At the office, he began to lay out the history of his marriage. Born into a wealthy family in 1952, Marlene Possel grew up in Gastonia, North Carolina. She had family in Gastonia who were in the restaurant business. She was not used to not getting her way. You could tell that she was not used to somebody telling her no. She did not hurt for anything. This is a woman who is very professional. She is dressed to the nines and speaks very eloquently. On May 15, 1983, 31-year-old Marlene married 36-year-old Irvin Johnson. For over 2 decades, the couple had a happy and prosperous life. They did have one daughter together. Irvin made a very nice salary, and Marlene focused on hosting extravagant dinner parties. Then, for reasons Irvin cannot explain, something in Marlene changed. Irvin said that in 2003, Marlene suffered a sudden loss in a local bake-off and was humiliated. She was treated for extreme embarrassment. She was always very intense and very competitive from that point on. Irvin added that when he took the job as chief financial officer of Tuscarora Yarns in 2000, 6 Marlene's suspicions turned to the well, like administrative assistant Shirley Pierce. Shirley was known for bringing incredible homemade treats to the office. When Irvin introduced his wife to Shirley offered Marlene a slice of her famous peach cobbler. Irvin said that he saw Marlene's competitive antenna go up. Marlene decided right then and there that she was going to prove she was the better baker. For the next several years, Marlene became completely fixated on Shirley. She even went so far as to hire a private investigator to try and discover Shirley's secret family recipes. The investigator said that Marlene hired him in September 2010 to watch Shirley's kitchen window. He could not get any proof that Shirley was using store-bought mixes. Marlene refused to accept the truth, and her obsession intensified. She hired another firm that used remote-controlled toy helicopters to get aerial views of Shirley's grocery bags. She supposedly knew when Shirley went to a grocery store and what brand of flour she purchased. Chapter 5, The Confrontation and Resolution. Irvin told the investigators that the less Marlene found, the more she became unhinged. Shirley, knowing full well Marlene was trying to steal her recipes, did not realize how serious the situation was becoming. Shirley never seemed to be scared because she knew she was doing nothing wrong, and she just assumed nothing would ever come of it. According to Irvin, in 2011, Marlene's paranoia finally boiled over at a local restaurant where Shirley and a few co-workers were having lunch. Marlene arrived dressed in dark workout clothes and a large hat. She held a menu in front of her face to try to shield her identity. It did not work very well. The waitress knew that it was her and immediately told the Tuscarora group. Marlene sprinted across the dining room like a gazelle. She grabbed a dinner roll from Shirley's plate and shouted that she would defeat her in the next charity bake sale. It was unexpected chaos, but it was over pretty fast. Following this lead, the investigators put out a notice for Marlene's vehicle. It is not long before they find her car parked at a boutique in downtown Salisbury. In the trunk of the car, they found a lot of cleaning supplies and empty boxes of red food coloring. They also found a broken cake spatula. They brought Marlene in for questioning. She had a fancy manicure, and the tips of her nails were stained with vanilla extract. It was clear she had been in a tussle with a large baked good. Marlene claimed she was with her friend Tim Connor, a motivational speaker. The investigators drove out to the home of Tim Connor. Tim answered the door and was surprisingly cool and calm. He explained that it was just a friendship. However, when pressed about the cake, Tim looked up to the ceiling and said that he had not been totally honest. He admitted that Marlene had asked him to be her alibi for the great cake sabotage. With the truth revealed, the community realized that the whole situation was a giant misunderstanding born out of desire to be the best. Instead of a harsh punishment, the community decided to hold a grand baking mediation. In January of 2018, Marlene stood before the town council. She maintained a proud posture, but eventually admitted her jealousy over Shirley's perfect fondant skills. The council sentenced Marlene to community service baking cookies for the traumatic brain injury charity alongside Shirley. Shirley, with her ever-forgiving and beautiful heart, welcomed Marlene into her kitchen. They learned that by combining their skills, they could create the most magnificent desserts the town of Kannapolis had ever seen. The two women became the best of friends. Chuck and Shirley were married in a beautiful ceremony featuring a towering cake designed jointly by Shirley and Marlene. The town learned a valuable lesson about communication, forgiveness, and the fact that there is always enough room for everyone to shine in the kitchen. Chapter 6, A New Mystery in the Forest. Meanwhile, across the country in the beautiful and sunny state of Arizona, another tale of misunderstanding and community growth was unfolding. The Prescott National Forest provides Prescott, Arizona residents with endless recreational activities. People love to hike, ride bicycles, and go bird watching during the daytime. The tall pine trees create a serene and peaceful environment for families to gather and enjoy nature. On the evening of September 29, 1988, one local nature enthusiast was just finishing up a hike for the night. As he made his way back to his truck, he came across one of the area's many designated campfire pits. He saw a pile of discarded items that had been partially melted in a small contained fire. He saw what he thought was an arm poking out of the ashes. The gentleman was alarmed and went to a local drugstore to use the telephone to call for assistance. Within minutes, the local forest rangers and the Prescott Police Department responded to the area. Just outside of the city limits, known to locals as Gordo's Pit, the responders carefully examined the scene. They realized very quickly that the item in the fire pit was not a human arm at all. It was a plastic arm belonging to a retail store display mannequin. The mannequin had been heavily damaged and partially melted, giving it a bizarre and concerning appearance in the dark. The responders breathed a sigh of relief, but they were still puzzled as to why someone would destroy a perfectly good department store mannequin in the middle of a beautiful national forest. The mystery deepened when the local police received a missing persons report regarding a 19-year-old girl named Pamela Pitts. Pamela, who went by the nickname Pam, was known for a bright smile and her absolute zest for life. Pam was a wonderful young woman who was always doing something creative and always wanted to have fun. She was the type of person who could make friends with anybody she met. She was outgoing and just excited about exploring all the possibilities life had to offer. The oldest of 4 children, Pam loved nothing more than her family. Her younger sibling described her as an awesome mentor who was always there to provide guidance and a listening ear. By age 19, Pam was ready to explore the world and moved in with her new friend, Shelley Norgard. Pam and Shelley met through mutual friends and decided to share an apartment to save money. Shelley was 18 years old and was